Hello?
Coach Kevin Eastman.
Speaking.
Hey, this is Coach Scott Fields. Welcome. You're live on the show right now. How are you, my friend?
Good, Scott. How about you?
Doing well, thank you. I really appreciate you taking time from your busy schedule because I know there's a lot of other things and that you could be doing, but just to have you out as a guest on our show, we're lucky and fortunate. So thank you for taking the time.
No, the pleasure's mine, and you guys are doing a great thing for the game, and any way I can help, I'm glad to do it.
Oh, well, Coach, I really appreciate that. We had another one of your friends and one of our friends on. Coach Brendan Sear was a guest on our show as we ended last season, and he did an outstanding job, and I know you collaborate with him, but I was talking about the book that you have, and you sent me a copy of that, and I do a lot of reading in my spare time, and honestly, we'll get into this later, but I'm holding up a copy of the book right now, Why the Best Are the Best. And I'm going to tell you what, this is one of the best reads that I've had in the last couple of years because you dive into the mindsets, the strategies of champions and what it takes to have that championship culture. So we're going to talk about that in a little bit, but before we get into that, Coach, let's talk a little bit about, your coaching journey, going through the college level and then getting into the professional ranks, and just kind of share with us a little bit about what got you into the coaching level and, how things just kind of manifested for itself for you.
Yeah, well, I think usually when people have success, they're in an occupation that they have a passion for. And I enjoyed playing, and then when the game finally told me that you aren't good enough, you can't play anymore, it was for me a natural progression to get into to coaching. And I had an opportunity at the college that I went to, the University of Richmond, and back then they had what were called graduate assistants. So I was able to hop on, be able to do my master's work, as well as make a small stipend on the side. So that's kind of how I broke in at the University of Richmond, many years ago, 30 plus years ago. And then I had, like every college coach, a number of stops along the way as an assistant coach. Each time I was an assistant working for somebody different, I always tried to keep lists of what I learned from them that I wanted to do and what I learned that I shouldn't do if I wanted to become a successful coach. And I think you can learn both as you climb this ladder. So then I was at Washington State as my last opportunity to coach in college. Left there, worked for Nike for a while doing some consulting work with their what they called their elite basketball players, both in college and high school. We did a lot of skill development with them. And then that led to an opportunity with Doc Rivers with the Boston Celtics. And it ended up being a working relationship to start, and then, over the years it blossomed into being good friends. And as he often says, me being a valuable asset to him in his career. So I've had just a good fortune of working for some great college basketball programs that wanted to do it the right way, and then also being involved in some really unique situations with the Boston Celtics, one of the iconic pro franchises in all of sport, really.
Right.
And we had a chance to win a championship there in 2008, and then we lost to the same team we beat in 2010 to the Lakers. We lost the finals to them in 2010. So it's been a good ride, but I don't know that I set out, other than at one point I said to myself by 30 I wanted to be a head coach. And I was able to do that at a place called Belmont Abbey College, a small school in North Carolina.
Right.
But other than that, I didn't really put anything out there. I just wanted to do as well as I could where I was, because I think people who are in hiring positions, they see and hear those things. So I just felt confident that if I did my job as well as I could where I was, then I'd have an opportunity to keep moving.
Right. It's amazing because when we talked a little bit this morning, that's where you and I were first introduced to each other. You had left Belmont Abbey. You were actually at Washington State, and I was finishing my undergraduate, and I was already a college coach at King College in Bristol, Tennessee. So our relationship goes back many, many years, and I've really enjoyed, being a fan of yours from afar. You're very meticulous, you're very detail-oriented, and I think that's where that asset to Coach Doc Rivers, came in, because, he saw the strengths, and maybe some of your strengths were some of his weaknesses, and that's what really complemented each other, and where you guys were able to build such a great staff. And then, of course, working with Danny Ainge, who a lot of people out here in Salt Lake know because of his BYU years. But it's one of the storied traditional franchises in the NBA, and then, of course, you were able to go on with Coach Rivers out to LA with the Clippers, and even took an administrative job with him, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, when there was a change of ownership out there, when we went through that Donald Sterling fiasco.
Yeah.
And then there was a little bit of a time period where we still didn't have an owner. So Doc took charge of basically the entire franchise, and he wanted to get somebody on the basketball side that could really make sure that our culture got put in the right way and was maintained. So he asked me to do it. It wasn't like I jumped with joy to go into that role, but I knew it had to be done.
Yeah.
And then we kind of had an agreement where I would stay maximum of 2 years, because by then we knew there would be new ownership, and we should have the situation righted a little bit. And then I would go back on the bench. So it turned out that we got the culture pretty well, pretty strong after a year, and then I went back on the bench.
Yeah.
So I'm glad I did it, because now I have an appreciation for what the front office goes through, and how difficult a job, say you mentioned Danny Ainge, how difficult a job that is to keep putting a winning team out there on the floor.
Right, and year after year, and of course, I'm thinking back to like your championship years when, you had Kevin Garnett and Ray Allen and Paul Pierce and Rajon Rondo and Glenn Big Baby Davis, and I can imagine even the things that you learned from them as players, and like, what did Kevin Garnett bring, to the franchise as you guys were building a championship culture there to compete for a championship out there?
Well, we think, and Doc and I used to talk about this a lot, especially as the early part of Kevin's career there are only certain number of culture changers that ever play in any sport. And Kevin was one. No matter where he would go, he would change the culture just through the sheer force of his example.
Right.
And now that I've left the NBA and I'm now doing a lot of speaking, the majority of my speaking is in the corporate world. And one of the things we talk about in being a great leader, which Kevin was, is you have to be the example, and you have to be what you're asking the people beneath you to be. And they need to see that each and every day. And I often get asked in my talks, whether it be in the corporate world or be in the sports teams that I speak to, who was the best leader and best player you've ever been around, or your favorite player? And all three of them are the same. It's Kevin. Because
wow.
He did something that a lot of players that you want especially your best player to do. He would not put any demand on anyone else that he wouldn't put an equal to or greater demand on himself for the same thing. So, so many lessons. You could almost write a book on Garnett lessons.
Oh, I just remember the passion and the intensity and ferocity that he used to bring onto the court, because you could just tell that he loved to compete, and I'm sure that's probably some of the key attributes and skill sets that he brought, but yet that leading by example had to manifest a life of its own within the team and within that core group of players, and then all the way throughout the bench. I can only imagine how valuable that is.
Well, not only that, but he kind of changed the culture of the entire franchise, even to the level of how we traveled, and Kevin's just a big believer that, hey, once you bring us in, we're going to give you everything we have in our bodies to help this franchise win. And in return, we just ask that you give us everything you can as an ownership team to put us in a situation where it's a successful environment. We have everything we need. And that surely was the case with Kevin. But you mentioned passion, and this is something I speak on quite a bit relative to that word. You know, where the magic of Kevin's career really takes place is he had, if you can picture me putting my hand and my arm raised up in the air as the top point of his passion. He had so much passion. But what Kevin tried to do is he tried to make sure that his knowledge matched his passion. Because some people have passion, but they never get to where they want to go because passion alone doesn't get you there. At some point, you gotta be competent in your craft. And Kevin continued to study the game. He continued to ask questions. He continued to have a laser-like focus on scouting reports. He kept kind of libraries of matchups that he would have throughout the course of the year and years in his house. So that's kind of a special attribute that people don't often talk about with a guy like Kevin Garnett. But that's why, you know, the best are the best for a reason. Yeah. And that's kind of why I wrote the book, because we've got to find what those reasons are. And what I found over my 35 years in the game and then now being around the corporate world, having studied them as well, there are reasons, characteristics, traits, routines, mindsets that the best have that we actually can insert into our own lives. But the question becomes, are you willing to do it? And that's where the separation comes in. Many people are not willing to do it.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting because you see a quote that floats around on social media. You know, a lot of people want to be a beast until they have to do what a beast does.
Yeah.
Well,
you know, it's kind of like we had one of our security guys with the Clippers used to be the security person for Beyonce.
Okay.
And so I'm always trying to study the best and find out, why are they who they are. And I asked our guy one time, what separates Beyonce from so many others, just beyond her voice? And he said, oh, that's easy, triple sessions.
Wow.
And I said, what are you talking about? And then he said, well, when she's preparing for a show, she goes triple sessions. And they may not get home until 1 a.m. And after each session, they have a debrief. Was everybody turning their toes at the same time on the same angle? Was everybody lunging forward on cue? Did we have energy? Were we lacking at, all these things that we study in sports? And then I started to read up on her, and I watched a YouTube at one point, and she said something really interesting. Someone asked her, what's it like to be a star? And she said, well, I think you need to know that it's taken me 15 years to become an overnight sensation.
Yeah.
So the people don't see what goes in behind game night and bright lights. It's the dark lights of the gym. It's the dance studios and the dark stages that say Beyonce and her dancers work out in. We just have to study why are they the best, because we can, like I said earlier, we can insert these things into our lives. It's just a matter of are we willing to do it?
Coach, I agree. I think anybody that will pay, like you say, with laser-like focus and minimal distractions and have meticulous detail in their preparation and then within their execution, those people who continue to be a student of their game or the student of their craft, those are going to be the people who are going to be successful. And I'm holding up a copy of your book right now. Coach, how can people, get a hold of a copy of this book? I'm just blessed that you sent me a copy, and like I'm saying, I've read it, and I read a lot of books, throughout my time, because I'm always trying to learn and grow personally and professionally, and when I can have something like this in my library that I can always refer back to or reiterate in some of the practices that I'm doing, or maybe it's to check myself and hold myself accountable to make sure I'm doing the right things day in and day out to be successful. How can people get a hold of this book? Through Amazon, or can they contact you through social media where you can get them copies? But what's the best way for them to get a copy of this? Because I highly recommend this to anybody and everybody who wants to take their skill set and mindset to another level.
Yeah, well, thanks for asking. The quickest way they can get one would be going on to our website,
okay,
which is kevineastman.net.
Okay.
And then they'll be able to see an icon that has the word book on it. So they can just go to that and then go ahead and make their order, because we have them in hardback and soft cover as well. So that's one way. And then, of course, you can certainly do it through Amazon as well.
Okay. And again, it's KevinEastman.net. I want to have our producer put that up on our feed as it's going through, because to me, anybody who takes the time to watch this show, listen to you, I mean, they're going to be moved, they're going to be inspired, but I want them to have a copy of this book, again, just so they have it in their library, because again, you dive in to, multiple powerful lessons that are going to impact, inspire, and define them to help them, hone their skills and hone their craft. And again, you talked about Kevin Garnett, you've talked about Beyonce, but I mean, you would carry around a blue folder and you would make notes, and then you would stick stuff in that folder, and that's how you were so meticulous with your detail, because you would go back and refresh or reiterate things that you were finding on why a certain individual was successful. Kind of go into what that was about for you as you carried your folder around and would stick new ideas into that folder for yourself.
Yeah, well, the ideas that go into my blue folder are things that are really important to me, that at any time that I'm in a line, or I'm on a plane, or I'm waiting maybe at a dentist or a doctor appointment, I can pull these out and just kind of review them. And I just happen to reach into my briefcase, because I carry it with me at all times, when you started to talk about this. And I had just gone over at the dentist the other day, because it's the one that's in front of the packet, my personal growth plan, just to remind myself. And on it is, I want to read minimum of 2 hours a day. I want to find time to think. I want to work out. I want to keep what I call a WILT list, W-I-L-T, which for me means what I learned today. And I challenge myself to have an entry each and every day in that WILT notebook. So that was just a quick reminder. And then recently I found something that, believe it or not, when I was a graduate assistant at the University of Richmond, this is probably how anal I am. This is an old typewriter, and I put the date, and it said April 24th, 1980 at 8:08 a.m.
Wow.
And it was a list of my long-range career goal and 22 things that I felt were necessary steps to get there.
Wow.
And since I found that, I go back on it now, and I should still be doing these things. So this will be a list that I'll probably, not probably, I will keep in my blue folder forever. And then sometimes I see something, that I like. A simple statement the other day was, things are always going to stay the same if you decide to stay the same.
Oh.
So very simplistic in its nature, but very powerful in terms of its results, right?
Yo,
so
yes.
That kind of will just remind me, hey, am I coasting here? Am I staying the same, or am I growing?
Oh, Coach, I love it. And again, sometimes less is more. And something as simple as that, as just a daily reminder for yourself, just for personal growth and empowerment, not only empowering others, but empowering yourself and reminding yourself to stay on track with your personal growth and development, I think is very key for growth for all of us, no matter what walk of life we're in or what job or what profession you choose. To me, success is a choice, and every day we have a choice. And are you choosing to get better? Are you choosing to be complacent? Are you choosing to challenge yourself and hold yourself accountable? And I think those are all key questions that we can ask ourselves and say, why are we still in the same spot we were 3 years ago? Or why are we always pointing fingers at somebody else when there's 3 fingers pointing back at us? And a lot of times I don't think people hold themselves accountable enough. And that's where that complacency comes in. Do you agree?
Oh, there's no question. I think the most successful people in any walk of life are, one of the most important things they do is they execute a truth audit. I happen to do it a couple of times each year. Just sit down with a yellow legal pad, put a line down the middle. What do I think I'm doing well right now? What am I not? What do I have to improve upon? It's a very simple list, but it keeps me in check. And then along with this accountability, sometimes we don't see and we don't know what we might be doing or not doing. So I think everyone else, or all of us rather, I should say, we all need a truth teller in our lives.
Oh.
Someone who will be strong enough to sit down, look us eye to eye, and say, "Look, you are not doing this. You say you want to get to here, and you're not doing this, which will help you get there." Those are people that maybe we don't necessarily want to hear it, but for sure we need to hear it. So the accountability issue is all about, I believe, self-assessment and being truthful with yourself.
Oh, Coach, I love it, and I kind of get chills hearing you say this stuff because, again, it's so many things that I need to hear myself, because we're all human, and we all have human nature, and we all have habits, and it's to break those old habits of why we are where we are, or what we can do to try to help somebody else. And I love just hearing you articulate those things, because it is true accountability tests and measures, and sometimes it's hard to surround ourselves with people who are going to hold us accountable. But I think if we have those support systems in place, and we have people out there who are honestly going to tell us what we need to hear, not what we want to hear, I mean, all we can do is grow and develop, and we should accept that in our lives, especially as personally, not just professionally. And I wish I could sit here and talk with you for hours, because I think there's just so much insight that you can share with viewers of this show. But again, I want people to go out there and look up Coach Eastman. Again, KevinEastman.net to get a hold of this book, Why the Best Are the Best. And read that and really absorb it and take some quiet time away from all the distractions, to where you can really have that attention to the detail that he shared with you, because you're truly going to grow with this book. And Coach, I can't thank you enough for sending me a copy, and I'm so glad that we were able to finally connect, because I know when we contacted you a few weeks ago, you were over in Europe, you were doing some traveling. So for us to have you on this show, it's only making us better, and I really, really appreciate you taking the time from your schedule to share with us, about this book and this journey that you've been on that's been so successful. And I know great things are going to continue to happen for you, and whatever I can do for you from my perspective, man, please don't hesitate to call, because again, I've always admired you from afar and respect the work that you've done throughout the basketball industry, and now as a speaker. And again, if you want to contact him for speaking engagements, he has different social media outlets. I encourage you to look him up, and please take advantage of getting a copy of this book, because it's definitely one of the best reads I've had in several years. And I can't thank you enough, Coach.
No, my pleasure, and I'm going to leave your listeners and viewers with one last thing relative to this concept of best. and it's a kind of a personal philosophy I've had, and I try to share it with every crowd that I speak to. And it simply goes like this. There's more inside all of us. There's more inside us, and our challenge is to reach deep inside and try and pull that out. And if we can't do it ourselves, get into circles that can help pull that success that's inside of us, pull it out, because it's there, and I think we're all put on this earth for some reason. And once we find out what that reason is and pull that out from inside of us, there's no telling the impact that we can have on others. And ultimately, I think whether you're a coach, a leader, or just a human being, that's kind of what we're here for, is to help others get where they want to go as we are getting to where we want to go.
Coach, that's awesome and that's powerful, and I can't thank you enough. And we're lucky to have you, and we're going to be better for it. We're going to be enriched for it, and we're going to get copies of this out to so many different outlets. And again, I just want people to take advantage of this opportunity. And again, I can't thank you enough, and I look forward to crossing paths with you. Maybe see you at the NBA Summer League this year in Vegas, and we'd love to get together and have breakfast or lunch with you sometime.
Sounds good, Scott. Keep doing what you're doing, because you're impacting people.
Well, Coach, I appreciate that, and thanks again for coming on the show.